My name is Michael Amandusson. I work as a business development manager at KUKA Nordic here in Gothenburg in Sweden. Today's topic, as already mentioned, is KukaSim 4.10. And just to handle some expectations, we will not during the day do a basic presentation of KukaSim, but will focus on what's new in 4.10 compared to 4.3, which was the older version. And the reason why we're jumping from 4.3 to 4.10 is actually to be in sync with Visual Components release numbers, because KukaSim is closely related to Visual Components, as some of you might know. KukaSim 4.10 is not a major release, it is a service release, but still it does contain a few new features which are pretty useful, and we will have a practical look at them during the day. So let's start with where to get hold of the software. 4.10 can be downloaded on this link or at my.kuka.com. And on that page you land on, if you follow this link, if you scroll down, there is a downloads tab. And under there are a number of available downloads. And there you will see this field, KukaSim 4.10, available for download. And if you press this button, you will get the download. This, however, requires a valid login at my.kuka.com, which I expect most of you do have. If not, the registration is totally free, of course. And on the same page, which I mentioned here of KukaSim 4.10, you can also acquire a trial license. At the top of the screen, in the top bar, there is a button called Access Trial that will give you a valid trial license, which will have full functionality for 30 days once you activate it. Also important to know is that once you have installed 4.10, it will install itself in parallel to any older versions of KukaSim you might have. That means that if I already have the older version 4.3 installed, 4.10 will not overwrite that installation, but instead install itself in parallel with that one. So after that, you will have both versions installed. And in the case you actually do already have a valid license for KukaSim 4.x, any version 4 license, that same license is also valid for 4.10. So there is no upgrade cost for this version. Let's also talk about compatibility. So KukaSim is also not only supported Windows 10, but also Windows 11. This is the first version that officially supports Windows 11. But also on the robotics side, we need to discuss what it supports. So we have several releases of our KUKA system software, the software which is sitting in the controllers of the robots. And the latest release there is 8.7.8. And if you have any KSS which is higher than 8.7.5, you actually need KukaSim 4.10 to support it, because the 8.76, 7.7, and 7.8 are only available in 4.10, not in 4.3. So let's have a look at the new features then and dive right into it. Once you start KukaSim, one of the absolute first things you will see is the welcome screen, which is brand new. So let's have a look at it in the real world instead. So now I'm actually in KukaSim, as you see, and this is the welcome screen we get. Here you can find some highlights, some news from Kuka, both in these videos and some really useful tricks here. Here we can open the most recent files we've worked with. For any new user, there are some documents or tutorial sides buttons here. You can go to getting started guides. You can find our online tutorial videos by pressing this button. You can go to our webinars page by pressing this button. Really useful is also the visual component forum for tips and tricks, and this button will bring you there. But you will also reach your license handling here. So here you can actually, if you want to purchase a license, this will bring you to our My Kuka marketplace where you can directly purchase a new license, or you can manage your already existing licenses. That will bring you to your asset page in My Kuka where you see each of the licenses that are registered to you. And finally, we can then request a simulation from Kuka if you want to have help of creating a simulation. This is where you enter that. And finally, if you want to get directly in contact with our hotline, you use this button, obviously. So let's open the most recent simulation I actually did, which is a simple palletizer application. And the next new thing a experienced KukaSim user will notice is that the e-catalog has been restructured. This will take some getting used to, but as soon as you get that done, it is actually quite obvious. The reason why we do this is to actually follow the structure we have on My Kuka and our marketplace. So at the end, it will be easier for everyone. So when we look in KukaSim and we bring up the e-catalog, let's do that. I'll have to bring it up. So what we will see is actually that the toolbars have changed place, basically. One of the really new cool features is something called a focus mode. That means that we can actually, if we have a really cluttery applications like this one, we can change focus. And let's have a look at how this looks in the real world. So let's go back to Sim, which we have here. And in the toolbar on the left-hand side, we now have a new button. So if I select the robot in the application here, for example, I can now choose to turn on focus mode. And we will see that it shadows out everything else than what I have focused on. And there is actually, if I press the drop-down list, I can set the opacity of the surrounding equipment like this to a varying degree. When I run the simulation, you see it's still moving, the objects are still moving. The dynamic object which the robot grabs are actually highlighted once I grab them. But I can change these settings here and say that dynamic component options. So every dynamic object could also be always focused like this instead. So therefore I get to choose which objects are really shown. This is really a nice feature to be able to focus on what's important in the simulation itself. And of course, you can always turn it off, on and off, as you like. And here we are back to the e-catalog, and you actually see that instead earlier we had a show window where we could hide and close these windows. These have now moved up here as a small icon where I can bring in the different windows we have. And for anyone who has, you see that the structure here is changed. The next feature I was planning to show you, which is brand new, is a quite interesting one. It is a feature called sublayouts. We can now create whole layouts as objects and pull them into the screen and handle them as one object as we like. Let's have a try at this one then. So I'll go back to my small simulation, which palletizing simulation. When I go to the tab Cell Graph, we here have a list of all of our components as before. But there is a new tab here now, which is called Layouts. So if I switch to them, you see that we have the root layout, and again with all the objects in the screen. I can now choose to create a new sublayout. I give it the unique name of test1, and I say that all the components I want here should be brought into this sublayout by just dragging and dropping them. They are now part of this sublayout, and I can now move this complete layout as I like this. And of course, it will still function and run as we expected. So everything connected to it will move accordingly. I can also do this in several layers. So I can even here, if I right click, create a new sublayout here. And then let's say that I want all the fences, for example. I'll just drag them to the sublayout and name this to fences or whatever I want to name it to. And now the fences are its own sublayout, where I can move the whole thing depending on what level I click. This is really useful at the end of the day. But that's not all, actually. I can now save my layouts as objects, and just from my Explorer window, drag in a new layout completely into KukaSim, and it will turn up as a new separate layout within the total layout, as you will shortly see. And now we actually have two of these palette cells, and I can now move this one just like I did before. So let's just drag that one over here, and I can handle them just as any object in KukaSim. So let's move this palletizer over there. And once I run the simulation, of course, both simulation would run as expected. Now it's the same application or layout I pulled in twice in the simulation, but I'm actually not limited to doing that. I can now, with these, combine several different layouts. So let's bring in a totally different layout. And that will also be handled as a separate layout within the layouts. So if you build up your library with standard layouts, you can very easily combine this to larger layouts. In this case, I've brought in a layout with our mobile platforms running as well. It is a pretty large one, so there we are. It's called small, and now I just position this layout as I want it to be. I want it to sit somewhere like this, for example, and that's cool. Now I can run the complete thing. And you will see that also, and as before, we can choose to speed up the simulation, and we will see that also the AMRs are starting to move these shells around. So an extremely fast and easy way to create larger simulations with standard layouts and combine them into more advanced simulations. This is actually one of the better new functions in this new version of KukaSim, I would say. We got a couple of questions here. Any restrictions for the amount of layouts in total? I'm not sure, to be honest. I can't answer that right now. And there is also a question which says, if I make a change in the imported sublayout, will it dynamically update in the simulation? No, it will only drag in the simulation, update it while you drag it in. Update it, the file, it will not automatically update. Can you mirror the sub layout? No, I can't really. That would be a really cool function, but luckily I can't. I don't think so anyway. There are a few more nice features which has popped up in KukaSim. So this is all about the sub layouts. Sten asks if KukaSim supports Solid Edge 2024 layouts without conversion. I'm not so well spoused in Solid Edge, but if we want to import a CAD file, this is SolidWorks from 97 up to 24. So all these CAD formats are supported by KukaSim, so just go ahead and test it. You should not be required to export it as a step file. It should be able to read a SolidWorks file directly. The next feature I wanted to talk to you is the multi-program editor, which is brand new, actually. So I'll just be a bit brutal and I'll throw my fantastic layout away. And we have now a empty screen here, and I'll go to the e-catalog and let's bring in a couple of robots here. So I'll just do the IonTech robot, and it really doesn't matter which one I choose. So let's take the 50 kilos. And a 70 kilos. So now we have two, or why not do even 3 robots in the layout here. Now, when I select a robot, just like before, there is a programming tab where we can switch to programming mode and start programming this robot here. The new feature here is that I can actually now open up more programming tabs simultaneously. So I can actually compare program lines between the different robots and copy programming lines between them. So I can actually have several programming windows open at the same time. Before, you could only have one programming window open at one time, which sometimes created quite an annoyance. I see in the question window that Christian has said that he's using KukaSim 4.3, and he asks if these changes apply to that version as well. And no, if you want to use this function, you have to install the 4.10. And at the beginning of the webinar, which you will receive as a video, there is a QR code with a link to where you can download the software. So this is also really useful when we are creating larger robot programs, or we have created smart functions, that we can actually view them and follow the execution in both windows to see if there is a problem in the robot program somewhere. So in this example screenshot here, you see I've opened up all three programming windows. There is also something called the guided workflow. There is not so many examples in it, but this is actually a help system guiding you to create specific functions step by step. And it is available from the help tab. So let's switch to the help tab. We see now here that there is something called guided workflows here. Let's just close down that programming windows and bring up the guided workflows. Right now, the number of these guided workflows are pretty limited, but they will grow in number over time. So you could both create it by KUKA, but you can also create your own. And there are subcategories like, let's do the robot programming. And then there is some basic robot programming. And then you get a step-by-step description of how you want to do things. And you can actually click done on each step, and it will take you through it quite by how to set it up with IOs, basic task motions, and you just click it. We hope and believe that once you try this, you will find them more useful than a regular help file. That is our idea. And again, the idea is that these guided workflows will grow in number over time. They will update automatically over net when KukaSim is connected to the internet. Now, another feature which is available in KukaSim 4.10, but actually also in older versions, is a mixed reality app. I hope that a few of you have tried this one, but it is actually an app for either your SmartPad or your tablet. And you can bring up your simulation in a mixed reality environment at your office, at your customer site. On the screen, you will see a link to where to download this app, either on Google Play Store or Apple Store. You can just search for it as well if you like. It's called KUKA Mixed Reality, of course, and download it. It's a freeware app. And the only thing you need to do is, if you have a simulation, I'll bring back the palletizing simulation we had before. There we are. And most of you who have used KukaSim, you know that we can export it as a 3D PDF. We can export it as a video file, but we can also export it in an animation file, a file format which is called VCAX. I have already exported that in advance, like any good TV chef. And this is a file which we can use either in a freeware 3D viewer, which is called Visual Components Experience. This is a freeware, so if you want to hand over this to a customer, you can hand it over like that. We can also use VR glasses to view this simulation, so we're actually in the simulation. But more importantly, we can email this to our phone. Bring that up in augmented reality. And just for me to play with, last evening when I did this, you can do this in full scale, but we can also do that as a miniature. So while I was preparing this yesterday evening, I sat and played and did. This is a screenshot from my iPhone. There is actually also a pretty good tutorial on how to use it on YouTube. And this is the link you need to get it. But this is a freeware and it's a really powerful tool of doing it. This pretty much brings us to the end. As said before, we would today focus on the major news of 4.10, not go through so much the basics of KukaSim. You will receive a link to the recorded webinar later on today. This will also be uploaded to our YouTube channels, KUKA Nordic, where we have a lot of other webinars, which you might find useful. So have a look at those as well. And beside of that, I do thank you for your attention. Thanks a lot.
Industrial intelligence.